can. Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. Hey, John.
Hi.
Loud and clear. I went and picked up these fancy new earbuds just for this, and yeah, I should have maybe tried them out before I got on the Zoom with you. The quickest learning curve I've ever had.
Well, I can hear you loud and clear.
I don't know if that's a good thing, actually. Now that you say that out loud. How you doing?
Um, I'm good. I'll just get you to tilt your camera up ever so slightly. You're chopping your head off, or from my end anyway. You're.
It's just all forehead, anyways. But there we go. Yep, this is why I paint. I'm using my iPad here, so it's how's that?
Yep, that's great. They are iPads are precarious. They're really hard to balance. They should come with a
Yeah,
tripod or something, an attachment.
I kind of have something, but I just recently moved and everything's still in boxes. And when I first got here, I just had a couch and a couple of books and a sketchbook, and I was kind of like, wow, this minimalist lifestyle is pretty awesome. Now it's like 1,300 boxes of books later, and yeah, I'm running out of space. So anyway, yeah, my I guess that to say that my um, iPad holder is still to be found.
Yeah, it's probably in a box.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I moved it all, so nobody tea leafed it or anything. So
Very
yeah,
good.
it's great to be here. This is kind of surreal for me. This is great.
Oh yeah, why is it surreal?
Oh, it's just been a long time listener of yours and enjoyed a number of your artist chats. Learned a
Okay,
lot.
good.
Learned what not to do as well as what to do in painting in the painting world. Great.
Very good. Right now, if you're listening, I'm talking to Aaron Sidorenko in Calgary, in Canada. I got that right, didn't know you're in Calgary.
Bang on. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, lovely. And just to give you time context for our conversation, today is Friday, the 24th of March, 2023. So, for someone listening who hasn't seen your work, how would you describe your paintings?
Oh, I honestly haven't listened to you in a few months, so I crunched in a bunch of your interviews, and it was like, yeah, okay, that's how I'd answer. That's how I'd answer. And you think I would make little bullet points on
Yeah,
these
the
questions?
moment
I'm
is here
already
now.
freezing up. Yeah. I'm all over. I love the 2D image. Just outside of the digital world, but anything with pigment. Um, I try my hand at watercolor. I try oil. I try acrylic. I've even tried putting pigment with silicone, which really burns the eyes. Actually, like talking because the catalyst always changes. So I'm very experimental in my practice, but I usually use people as even in caustic. I use people as kind of my armature to experiment with in the two-dimensional world,
Okay.
if you will. Yeah, yeah.
So, figurative, if you're listening. And
Portraiture. Yeah, sorry.
that's all right.
Uh, portraits, people's heads, and nudes. Yeah.
Yeah, very
And then
good.
I foray a little bit in abstract, um, just because it's another muscle in the visual exercise. It's how do you make abstract? I don't post too much of those. I think they're just more of a personal testing ground, but I really enjoy it. It's the difficulty of how do you make something interesting that's nothing can be related to really.
Yeah.
And then yeah, landscapes just because they're way more forgiving with faces. You could have a branch way off as opposed to a nose, and
Yep.
nobody will be the wiser. So it's kind of nice too, a little more
Yeah.
fun.
Once it still looks like a branch, you're fine.
Exactly. As long as it doesn't get bigger on the way out into the air.
Yeah.
Always tapers.
Just to put your sensibilities in context, who are your creative heroes? Are they all artists?
Uh
painters, I
My
mean.
creative heroes. Yeah, there's a lot of great painters out there. Heroes is a big word to me. Like those are usually reserved
Okay.
for the people I've met and known, but
Okay.
people that I really love their
Influences.
work.
Yeah.
Influences, yeah. Well, there's a stack of books that I was very conscious of my backdrop of
Yep. Very good.
Sargent, and of course Jenny Saville being the mother of modern mastery in figurative work. Um, the States, Alex Kanevsky. In Canada, there's Montreal artist Sophia Jourdain, who's pretty fantastic. She's going more and more down the deep with conceptual, but she's fantastic. She's really you're looking with your head more than your eyes on her work in the recent work. But yeah, there's I could go on and on. You, John Dalton, my goodness, doing this, making a community. It's to me more and more art is about
Stop it.
community and I can't. Okay. um, yeah. What about you? Who's your biggest influences? I've never really heard that in any of your podcasts.
Oh, wow. Okay. I think Caravaggio, Rembrandt, they're two big ones. Um, Sargent a bit. Um, I like a lot of those English painters from the sort of. I think it was before the Second World War. I think there was a school. I don't remember the name of the school, but I seem to like those as well. I'm partial to Pre-Raphaelites as well. And then modern day, it's pretty much everybody that I've chatted to on the podcast. All 200 and you're 270. Your episode is 270. So all those people have influenced me greatly.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it is. I'm so grateful to them all.
Yeah, podcasts, they're really one of the only truly great things about the internet. Like it's been getting more so and more corrupt, but podcasts, they just seem like the purest way of these long form conversations that are just magic to me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
oh, great. I think so,
Yeah.
obviously. um, all right, so what's your backstory? How did you end up being the artist that you are now? Take us back. Take us back to the beginning.
Um, well, my dad was an artist. He passed away in 2014. He didn't give me too much instruction in life. Um, but he went to the local art school here in Calgary back in the mid early 60s. And so yeah, his thing the one piece of advice or art training that I received from because we want to emulate what's around us. And my dad was always in his little studio drawing. So I was drawing and then he just told me to get rid of my eraser. I'm like, well, it's kind of a radical thing for a 11 or 12-year old. But yeah, I've gone back to the eraser as a tool. But my dad, yeah, and a couple of his friends were artists as well. Then I tried a few things. I was
Just hang on a sec. What's the
oh
thinking behind that? I think I get it, but explain it a bit more about getting rid of the eraser.
work with your mistakes.
Yeah.
Work
So you're
work
sort of
work with your
forcing
mistakes.
yourself
Yeah,
to live with everything and make it
yeah,
work.
exactly. Or just cover it up if it's opaque enough. But I don't think he was referring to painting. But yeah, it's I think one of the because he was an illustrator as well. He's trained as a commercial artist, the term back then. But one thing that I see the difference between illustration and fine art is, for me, fine art is you're piling all those problems on the canvas or the paper or whatever, and you're trying to dig it out and work with those little oopses. And then that gravitas that it comes with, whether it's conscious or not, is there for the viewer to kind of maybe dig into and have an emotive response. Where illustration is everything's kind of figured out, and then the image comes out of that afterwards. well, now digitally, but yeah, it's yeah, working with your mistakes. That's the
Yeah.
human condition, you know?
Yeah. Brilliant. All right.
Yeah.
So back to the backstory. Dad
Okay.
gave you that great bit of advice. Then what happened?
And then my mom kicked him out, and I didn't see him for 14 or 15 years after that.
Okay.
Uh, I tried going to become EMS. I was with ideas of being a paramedic. I would love to be a doctor, but my memory and retention is just god awful. So I knew that wasn't in the cards. And then I had a very supportive wife back then, and I was always drawing and doodling, and it's really hard to get into work here. You have to volunteer outside of the town and pay your dues for a few years, and then there's that big thing of me not liking other people's blood. So
Yeah, that would be a drawback
that,
for an
that's
emergency
that,
services person. Yes.
that's a strike against. Yeah, yeah. And then she said, just go to art school. So I took a couple of continuing ed um, classes and loved it. The instructors were fantastic, and just like everybody, I'm sure you're with your like-minded people, and everybody kind of gets everybody a lot more. And there's just an ease in the communication and respect and all that, and it's just I was in my glory. So yeah, signed up for full time at back then it was ACAD. Now it's AUA, Alberta University of the Arts, which I'm doing evening instruction classes on, which is I never thought I'd be that good of a teacher, but I just try to kill them with enthusiasm more than actual knowledge. you yeah, and they're making me a believer as a teacher. The students are so great, and they're just so hungry. They're mature students or older students for the most part, and it's so weird when you ask them to do something and they just go ahead and do it, as opposed to well, being a parent. you know, you ask your kids 1,000 times, you don't get anything. But yeah, these art students are great. So anyway, went to art school, practiced. I worked with turpentines and all those old harmful things. So I moved the studio to downtown Calgary, um, and met some really great mentors and some of my best friends now. Still learning from. Went to New York Academy of Art and took some workshops with Alyssa Monks, who I think you've had on here.
I have, yeah. Twice.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart twice. Whoa,
Mm-hmm.
nice. Same answers, same questions. I'm just kidding.
Um, no,
Different
first
hairstyles.
one was just my questions, and the second one was listener questions.
Oh, neat. Yeah, yeah, yeah. She's all art. She would do these demonstrations, and she'd be like in the flow state within seconds. I was like, wow, this is a painter. Um, I learned a lot from Alyssa, like just on the color theory side of mixing and matching and not being too frugal with those paints. It takes what it takes, and that's what painting is for me. And it kind of has been, but it was a nice reassurance of hearing it from somebody as beautiful and successful as Alyssa. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I've just been practicing away, and I like to put shows together. Like I love following, trying to find basement dwellers, artists that are a little meek and maybe scared to have or never asked for an opportunity to show their work. So I put a thing on called People's Portrait Prize, and we just had our third exhibition, and it's over 200 artists and 300 works or something like that. And it's as long as it can fit through the door, it's in. And three
Wow.
major art institutions here in the city have come along and have not asked for any rent or anything. They just love the whole premise of it. And there's a People's Choice Award, which is the biggest one, and then there's jurors, and then each institution votes their favorite pieces. But it's the long lineup of signing in where you see this magic of people dropping off their art, and they're, hey, I seen your work on Instagram. Yeah, I follow you, and just these interactions, these real life interactions that are just
Yes.
it's magic to
Yeah,
witness, I tell you.
sounds beautiful. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, it's like 8-year-olds. 8-year-olds were the first one to sell their work because things are for sale or not for sale, and then they're hanging beside somebody who had a solo show in our national gallery. Like it's just
Yeah.
when people let go of their egos, it's just this beautiful thing, right? It's
Yeah.
about community. Yeah, yeah, it's great.
Oh, that's lovely. Wow. So, how does the idea for a painting start for you? And particularly, how do you record your ideas? You know, are you a thumbnail person, a sketchbook person? Do you write? Are you like a, words kind of person? Or do you make little voice memos? How do you capture those little wispy bits of inspiration that come along?
Yeah, a little bit of all that, John. It's I always keep a sketchbook. I'm always drawing. I just recently, or relatively recently, broke up with another long-term relationship, and I find myself I draw a lot. So Chuck Close said
And get on Twitter.
inspiration.
I noticed that on Twitter.
What happened on Twitter? Oh, oh, you did.
I did. I got onto your Twitter thinking I'd see some paintings. No.
It's me being having an attempt at being a poet.
Well, I was kind of going, wow, is this a case of that thing of drinking and dialing? Is this like
Oh,
a version of that? Is this like drinking and tweeting? It's
a
pretty
little bit.
raw. I salute your courage. Good for you.
Oh, I never go back to read that stuff, and frankly, I'm terrified to. But it's just a vent. For some reason, it feels very therapeutic. I don't know.
Yeah, I get that.
Uh, um, that's really. I feel a little naked right now, John. Jeez.
Well, get off Twitter if you don't want to feel
Yeah,
naked.
that's true. Yeah, big platform. I thought I was hidden amongst the masses there, but yeah, a drawing. Well, my parents
Sorry,
have
I
always
interrupted you.
argued.
You were saying you just broke up
Yeah,
with
yeah,
somebody and it was
yeah.
something to do with drawing. Drawing is helping you with
Drawing.
that, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was wondering why, because I have, just like most of your guests, ADHD. Like my attention is so hard to rein in, but drawing and fly fishing, I just zone out and have pinpoint focus. But yeah, drawing was that and has been that. So I work out ideas in drawing, or more ideas, big broad ideas, and just keeping that little what are those ovens with the little fire that's always going, keeps the whole thing kind of hot. They're very expensive. The Queen has a couple of these ovens supposedly, but it just keeps when I'm not set up to paint, because that can be quite the ordeal. I just keep drawing and sketching and really rough and keep observing and try to keep those creative eyes warm, I guess, lack of a better term. Uh, yeah, it's I'll do little color studies. I'm really into pencil crayons lately. The Cadillac, those Caran d'Ache pencil crayons, they're just beautiful to because they're a bit of a wax base, so you could heat it and you could smear it around, and all of a sudden you get
Mm.
this weird kind of photo quality if you kind of have all the layers right of color.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just going with that pigment's pigment. It's just the catalyst is changes, right?
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't know
not. I'm
why
not
people get
familiar
so
with them.
set on. Oh, they're fantastic. They're a Swiss pencil crayon,
Oh,
which
okay.
is a
Well,
Russian
maybe I know
word for
them if I see
pencil.
them. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
maybe. Yeah, yeah, right. Welcome to globalization. But
So, so with the things that you're sketching, are they coming from like externally, like you see something, or or are they coming from inside, like, oh, I have this inner vision, or I want to make a painting about sorrow, or I want to, like a conceptual thing, or what sort of things are you when you're sketching? What is it?
yeah, I'm pretty visual based. I like to, of course, abstract it and push it by throwing elements of maybe chaos, for lack of a better term. I like chance and serendipity to play my collaborator with. But I'm pretty heavily photo based, and yeah, emotions is maybe why do some of the art, but I hope that it's not really in the art. If that makes sense. I'm not making a comment on emotions. It's just
Yeah.
sometimes it's an escape from emotions, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
I like my art to be emotive, which is always, I think, the greatest goal of any artist is, you mentioned Rembrandt. I was crying in front of Rembrandt the first time I seen that. And then I noticed the costuming. I'm like, man, that's just a 70s palette knife on velvet. But the faces on Rembrandt are just unbelievable. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've moved on to Vermeer as an overall fave of the old painter schools. Like, and he has a. Have you gone to his show, the Vermeer show that's at?
No, no, I haven't.
Oh, I guess they
I
have like
have seen Vermeer's, but I haven't gone to this new show.
yeah. I have a friend there now, and with the photos that are coming back all in one space, it's just
Yeah.
unbelievable. Anyway,
Yeah, it's a landmark show.
yeah. So I like to take my own photos. It's really hard to work from other people's photos. So I like the ground up approach to work. I'm not a control freak, but I like seeing where the light's coming from and really getting a 360 of my sitters or um,
Yeah.
especially of people that I meet. Yeah, it's I could paint landscape. I've done some landscape commissions, but from other people's photos, which is fine because I don't know. I just a little disconnect with landscape, but people I need to meet them, and I think it comes through somehow, some magical way that
Yes.
I knew that person. Yeah, and ideally it'd be a charcoal drawing or a quick sketch of that person sitting for me, and then taking the photos and then working from those photos a little bit later in the studio.
Yeah. And when you're doing your photo shoot, are you directing it or are you just seeing what happens?
Bit of both, bit of both, and being open also to what they want, because the ideal commission is carte blanche, but sometimes some parameters too like are work well. Yeah, too much choice kind of paralyzes me, but if they want to be seen in a certain light or they're not wearing the right shirt at the time. But yeah, it's funny how there's so much. There's 32 muscles in the face, and just the slightest change of emotion or everything shifts. Like I was taking some screenshots of some of your meditation videos, trying to find the right one of you, and it's well, the the information wasn't there. It's the the what's that, the 240 or whatever. It just out, and I wasn't really happy. But like the range, I took 20 some photos, and they're all just not quite right, and they're all just a little different. It was kind of fascinating on how how I actually am able to get, because I've been really happy with a lot of the photos that I paint big. I'm really happy with, and sometimes I work from film, and just it's always the first photo. It's always the first photo that I take. I
Wow.
could take 3 hours worth of modeling, but it's 99% the first photo, which is fascinating unto itself. But
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I think because I just know what I want right from the get go, and that's what I get. And then I'm like, well, let's try this. Let's try this. The ones I'm not
Mm.
sure about, they never really quite seem it. But
Yes.
yeah,
Very good.
good idea with the water on the side. Thanks.
You're welcome. Um, so, okay, you've done your photo shoot. Do you do a color study of the bigger painting or do you just get on with it?
This was, yeah, this made me realize my thing from art school 20 years ago. I used to grab the ugliest pigment tube. I'm I'm a bit of an art supply whore. That's another 1,300 boxes of art supplies that one day I might get to or whatever. But I used to have this habit of trying to make the ugliest color, the one that I was repulsed most from in my kit, and make it work in the painting. So I was at the time, I remember the headspace that I didn't really like identifying painters by their palette for some reason. It's like, oh, they're all browns. So they're all like, I never wanted to be stuck identified with my palette. So I was always trying to change it and shift it. And so that's where the fluorescence came from. I was like, how do you make this a legitimate pigment? Without being gimmicky? And that's a kind of a hard line for me to walk.
Yeah.
Um, to make it legitimate. And I thought it would be a temporary use, but those fluorescents are still with me 20 plus years later. And I think I kind of have a handle on them. But yeah, the colors are always shifting. I've gotten into browns now too. So fluorescents and browns, which who knows what the next painting will look like. But raw umber is just a great dumbed downer of high chroma colors, and which is still new to me. Pardon me.
So do you actually do a color study?
Oh, I do. I do little color charts. My ex was an artist as well, so she kind of introduced me to painting and putting all the names and things underneath and what you have with them. Um, I meditate on color. I try to I before I started painting, I have my photo reference and I'll do a little meditation on just what's there in the photo, but what do I want to exaggerate or completely change, whether in the darks or in the lights, and make it hopefully interesting. But yeah, I am thinking more realism colors lately, or more realistic colors. But yeah, that's always morphic. I don't do any little dabs and dashes on the side. It's all again, it's all just putting it on the canvas and trying to dig it out, seeing what happens.
Right. And how does the drawing phase go? Do you draw with paint or pencil, or like how do you get from the reference to the onto the
Yeah,
canvas?
sometimes I project. I work from life sometimes. I yeah work from my iPhone or my iPad. Um, I'll it's kind of even across the board with all that, regardless of scale of painting too. There's a an app where you have your iPad on a tripod, and then it's for mural painters. But that's next on my thing. And you have your phone, and it's the transparency of where you are in relationship to what your camera sees on your iPad ahead of it. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Because I barely understood what I just said. So yeah, I want to try to see what happens with that, but I'll need a really large canvas to really make that work. But it's pretty
Yeah.
exciting. I love the combination of tech tools because people are usually take a certain school and they stick with that school. But if you think back, I'm sure Da Vinci would have used whatever he had at hand, optics or
Yeah.
and maybe kept it quiet. But he was a curious mind and he tried it all. So it's like I like that school of thought. Just even though it's caveman endeavor, putting mud on the surface, but I love it.
And with the so you're drawing, you're looking at your iPad and you're drawing, or have you gridded it out and you're doing a grid thing, or
Yeah, I do a grid. Yeah,
okay.
uh, grids are great. I like that structure. I like that beginning of structure before I go into the real curvilinear organic
Yes.
side of things. Yeah, I used
Yeah.
to. That's all I used to do was grids.
And are you like pencil, charcoal, paint? Like what are you drawing with?
Sometimes I'll draw with that fluorescent paint.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Just yeah, just brush and long hair brush and just draw it with the paint. That's usually for the bigger paintings. I'll do it in that sense.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then correct it with a different color if it looks off, and try to remember which color was the right color.
And what do you like to paint on substrate wise? You know, canvas, board, aluminium, or
Oh, well, funny enough, I have some of these from your
Aaron's
lovely
gonna. Oh, right, from
competition.
Archfix,
Yeah,
from a
yeah,
competition. Who is
yeah.
it? I missed the label.
Oh, artifacts. Yeah,
Oh yeah. Oh, from the competition. Yeah, right. Now I understand.
yeah,
From
yeah,
the John the prize thing. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. I'm excited about that. I got the five different substrates, so we'll see. The copper, I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah.
I've
Shiny.
only done. Yes, exactly. We're all magpies with when it comes to that. Eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love linen. If I could, it's just that color and the clear gesso. It's almost a shame to cover it up with paint. Like linen is just so inherently beautiful. I don't know why it's so seductive, but seductive, seductive. I make up words, by the way, John. So
Hmm.
just feel free to
Seductive is good. I
ask me
like it.
on this. Yeah,
It's the sort of
the
thing you could
canvas
say to
generally
somebody, you
works.
know, if they were flirting with you, and you would kind of throw them. You know, you're very seductive. What did he? What did he just say?
Is that like subtractive seduction? You're very minimal with your seduction. Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you. What were we going to say?
No. Yeah, just going back to what I paint on. Canvas generally. I did a war vet series and still am doing a war vet series that worked with. I worked with World War II vets.
Hmm.
Just actually just over 10 years ago for a few years. And I didn't want to do art with them uh, because I just got out of marriage now and I just wanted a different headspace. And but a lot of them were with dementia and they didn't have cognitive or speaking abilities or hearing.
Yeah.
So I found, and they're great posers because their joints are so stiff they could just lock right up sitting up and they wouldn't move.
Yeah.
Maybe their eyelids would fall, but they're great models. And I'd be serving tea and drawing them in charcoal and decorating their rather institutionalized bedrooms with my art. And I took photos of them and not thinking that I'd do anything with them. But years later, I just I loved the experience so much that I wanted to really. My memory is very visual. To pull things out of the air is very hard for me. But if I see things, it really takes me back to that place. So working with their images for a few weeks for each piece was magical, and I wanted to give them credit, so I bought the best materials for that project. And they're all
Yeah.
6 foot heads, and they're yeah linen. That's where I got seduced by linen because I've heard of other artists going ooh and ah, but until you try it, it's great stuff.
Very good.
Do you paint on linen? What do you paint on?
Now canvas and now these boards. I'm going to have a go at those boards. Recently, I've been just on little square panels that that I can get in a headlock. That's the way I think of it.
Get in so you can keep it under your arm, no wind blowing it away, or when you're
Well,
transporting.
no, I was painting on bigger canvases, and I sort of felt they had me in a bit of a headlock. You know, that I sort of felt a little bit overwhelmed by them, and I just wanted to get something really solid I could beat up a bit with sandpaper and make, really, that I wasn't worried about putting something through the canvas. So I kind of think of it as like I can get them in a headlock and I can keep I can keep them under
Nice.
control.
Oh, I get that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting scale how, when you write down everything that goes into a painting, it's like, how do we even start to paint? And scale is a big one. Like little ones, those little intimate ones, they're way more difficult than big ones. Big ones, they kind of resolve themselves from a distance, and there's a lot more latitude on correctness or lack of correctness. But the little ones, you have to be bang on. And yeah, I love working in both, like 6 inch and 6 feet. I'm very comfortable with the bigger, but I like the challenge of the smaller headlockable
Yeah.
pieces. Yeah. I'm just gonna dim this light. Sorry, Jen. What's your subject matter that you're working with? Oh, we both left.
I had to fix the light as well. I took the opportunity. Um,
Nice.
well, from my marathon conversation with Nicholas Uribe, that kind of started a change in me. So I kind of shifted from, I was kind of painting, I was externalizing inner visions, if you know what I mean. Like I'd kind of have a very clear idea of what the painting was going to look like, and then it was just a process of getting it out of my head onto the canvas. And it wasn't anything specific that Nicholas said, but I kind of bring it back to that point of I sort of changed direction then, and I shifted to painting. I'd start off with a reference photo, but I wasn't trying to paint the reference. I was trying to stay with what it was about that reference that made me take the photograph in the first place, and sort of allowing that to inform the painting. So I start and I don't have a clue how it's going to end up, like what the finished painting is going to end up. Sometimes it's figurative, sometimes it's very abstract. And it's a very subconscious kind of process, because most of the time I don't have a clue, and I'm just kind of going along with it. And then all of a sudden it'll go, that's it, I'm finished. And I'll kind of stand back and go, oh, wow, okay. And sometimes it's very dark, and I'm going, Jesus, where'd that come from? And other times it's lovely. So it's the complete opposite to sort of externalizing an inner vision. It's more an exploration of aesthetics and what triggers me aesthetically.
A couple of questions on that. So, do you take a lot of photos? Like, do you go back into your phone and like scroll until something just says? And
Um,
second question, how accurate is that feeling? Like, are you able to portray that headspace into that work? Like, correct, like 100% or true to the
well,
feeling?
I'll answer you by telling you about a particular painting. I was walking along the beach, and there was this thing for mooring boats on the beach. So it's a big rock, and then there's this thing on it, and it looked for all the world like a giant key ring covered in barnacles. Okay, because it was that kind of shape, like a key,
Yeah.
like you'd have on your keys, but it had a big ring on it, and it just was such a strange thing. I took a photograph of it, and then months and months later, it always stayed with me. I always thought it was a really interesting image. I used that as a reference. Okay, just that one photo. I was like, there's something about that really, I don't know, resonated with me. And it went through lots of different, like initially I just was pretty much painting and drawing what I saw. Then it started to change. Then it went red. The whole color all went out except for red. It was just red and white. Then the panel broke. It started to splinter. So I sort of dug all that out and painted, on that indent, the flaw in the panel became part of the process. And, there was all sorts of sandpapering and scraping back and whatever. There was still that kind of outline of this keyring kind of thing. But then suddenly I was turning it on its side, and then suddenly it was finished. It was like, that's it, I'm finished.
90 degrees.
Yeah, and the name is Domestic Bliss, right? And it was like that. It was just very clear. That's it. Put the paintbrush down, and the name of this is Domestic Bliss. And when I looked at it, it looked like a house. It had actually become a house, because I turned it. It started off sideways, but then when I turned it the other, 90 degrees, it looked like a little house, and it looked like it all kind of made sense with this kind of domestic bliss thing. So.
Oh.
that's the way it goes.
So it becomes a bit of a dialogue instead of a monologue. Like you're okay with it telling you what it is,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
and you, yeah, kind of have this idea going in. Interesting.
yeah.
And
So
that's me with my practice, but not such in a bigger pictures. It's acting, reacting to what's happening on the surface. Like there's an
yeah,
overall direction. I'm headed west, but whether that's southwest or northwest, it's up to the
yeah,
piece.
yeah. And you don't know what you're gonna have to cross on the way. What rivers,
Right.
mountains,
Yeah.
valleys,
Yeah.
forests. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. Desert.
yeah. So
Deserts. Oh,
yeah, no, go ahead.
oh, just desert. It's like synonymous with self-loathing, and for me, I just think of the desert. If an environment can, um, you know, be personified, I'm like, yeah, that'd be self-loathing. It's just you're dry, you're hot, you're crawling, you're hating it, but you're just getting through it to find some oasis. Anyway,
Yeah,
that's what popped in my
take
bouncing brain.
yeah, taking the next step. Yeah. So how do you look like you're more of an alla prima kind of painter rather than a glazing kind of painter, but I could be wrong about that. How what kind of way do you paint?
Yeah, alla prima. I'll do a underpainting in acrylic. Just it seems more economical, especially on the larger pieces. And it's a little quicker gratification too. Wait a few minutes and you could attack it again with maybe a air quote more correct color. But I have been doing glazes lately on areas where I just want to kind of dumb down or knock down, push back or warm up, or bring. I did this raw umber, this photo of somebody's grandmother. And it's a beautiful photo. It's her on the shipping dock, and they gave me free reign to do whatever. And her skin she looked a little bit zombie esque with just painting her. And I thought raw umber would be warm enough to give her some life, but I it wasn't, and she was a zombie with a smile. So I just did a little bit of an oil glaze of some transparent reds, pinks, and it just really kind of harmonized the whole thing in a nice way. So I want to experiment more with that because I love the idea of you can never have too much in your kit, whatever it takes to build your house. You need the electrician, you need the plumber, you need all those things if you want to really be comfortable. So yeah, I'm getting more and more into glazing, and I want to see where that tide takes me, so to speak.
Yeah.
Hey, since I'm not really smoking in the same room with you, John, is that okay? I don't know if I've ever seen. I'm just gonna have my pipe. And a happy post St. Patty's Day, by the way. Sorry, I know this would have been great a week ago. An Irishman in Ireland talking on St. Patty's Day. That'd have been fantastic. Anyway, happy
Thank
belated
you.
St. Patty's Day.
Thank you. Did you hear my chat with Signer recently? I think it's like an episode or
A
two
bit of
back.
it. Yeah.
Well, it's just when you were talking about acrylics and glazing. Did you hear his what he was saying about how he uses the acrylics, multiple layers of the acrylics?
His work is so good. Oh my goodness. I saw some of his work in New York last time I was there, and I was just gobsmacked. I didn't get to that part. No, I didn't make it through the whole
Yeah,
podcast
it
yet.
was really good. What he was saying was that his when he's using acrylic, he gets loads of the same color, different brands maybe, but the same color, and he will layer them on top of each other. And he said it really adds a lot of, and because because it's acrylic, you can do that really fast. You can put 5 layers
Right.
down in an hour, of the same color on top of
Yeah.
each other. And he was saying it really adds huge depth to his work. And he was saying that's why people think they're oils. A lot of his acrylic work are oils, but they're not. So
Right.
when you were saying about that, and you were saying you were getting into glazing, I was like, oh yeah, that would be good for that.
And I've seen that in his work too. And I've seen his name evades me, but there's a minimalist painter who is just doing multiple layers. And it's weird how it's multiple layers will give it a different effect as opposed to just one thick transparent layer.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
why is that? I like to know the physics on that. It's interesting. There is a difference though. I've seen it. So it's yeah, I don't really have the patience too much for that, like to really wash after wash after wash. But yeah, I applaud those that can because the effect is amazing.
yeah. Well, he was laughing because he was saying the cheaper and nastier the acrylic paint, the better, because they're automatically a little bit more transparent.
Right,
Yeah.
less
So
pigment
when
load.
when you layer them on top of each other, they work really well.
That's funny.
Um, what do you have a favorite color palette that you always start with, or is it different for each painting?
I'm always discovering reds. And the thing is with my memory too, I forget. I know cadmium is great for kind of colors because it kind of dulls down right away and it's a little less obtrusive. But I'm always trying to find reds for pinks and flesh, and I'll paint flesh with one red one day. And I'll be even if it works out, I'll introduce another red, whether brand and or pigment. I don't pay attention too much, but I should to the pigment identifying number because yeah, it's a little tedium for me, but yeah, every day I remix, squirt different colors on my palette and try to make it work with what's already there.
Right. That's a
I
free
never want
for
to
all.
bake cakes. I never want to bake cakes. It's funny because the vet series is the only series where I actually accomplished a series of them. Because I get bored so quick. Like I love the idea of series, but then once it feels like I'm proficient in something, I just I get so bored. I'm like, no, well, I'm an artist. I can make my own rules every time. It doesn't matter.
Mm.
And I know that about me. It's like I always want to like learn how to do it. Oh, with my hearing, my earbuds just went. Can you hear me still?
Yeah.
Okay. I Yeah, I want to be. I would love to learn how to paint like Sargent, but I think I'd be bored by the fifth painting because he has his steps, his formula, and it's like the formula just kind of kills me for some reason.
Yeah. 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 That reminds me of Signer as well, actually, because
In
he
what
said
way?
this thing. Well, he said this thing about. He said, go and do some landscape painting and pick something boring to paint and make it, make it interesting. Well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'm saying it wrong, but it was
I like the
such an
essence of that.
interesting. Yeah, there's something about that. So maybe for Sargent, it wasn't formulaic. Maybe for
Mm,
him, it was a meditation on something. Like he kept each time it was new. I'd be
right.
the same as you though. I'd be like, if I felt like I'd figured it out, then it's like it's kind of
Mm,
like why I got a bit bored with the first way of painting I was talking about, because
mm.
I loved this. I loved seeing the painting in my head, and I loved seeing it when it was finished. The bit in the middle though was a bit boring. It was just execution. Both senses of the word.
Yeah,
Um,
it's that. Well, I always think of Van Gogh's chair in the bedroom. I'm like, wow, that seems
I
like
know.
such a profound. We have the bias of knowing his story, and we're taking that to the painting. But I'm like, this painting, it's just people travel thousands of miles for that perfect sunset so they could paint that. And I'm like, Van Gogh did a chair in his little meager bedroom that
I know.
I'm responding to like more than any sunset painting I've ever seen.
I know. Yeah. It's so
kind of
hard with Van
interesting.
Gogh, isn't it? Because I kind of I like to think I fancy that. Oh yes, I would appreciate this painting if I didn't know the story, if I didn't know the man and whatever. I don't know if that's true, but there's certainly there's so much in that, simple painting,
So much, and it's okay to have that bias. I know we like to weigh it, like even friends' paintings. Well, how do you can't separate. You can love the painting and him and love the painting because it's of him or from her or whatever. It's like, why it doesn't matter if anybody else likes it. It's like
Yeah.
what you or your experience with that work is. I know we try to objectively look at work, but do we need to, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have the opposite of that, particularly with people for the podcast, because I might hear them or hear of them on another podcast, and they sound like really interesting characters, and they've got loads of great stories and whatever, but their
Oh.
art just doesn't resonate with
Art
me.
teachers. That's most art teachers. They speak
And if
from such a place of authority on what art is and what it does, and you look at their work and it's like, wah, wah, wah.
yeah, well, it's a shame because I'm sure they'd be great
Hmm,
to chat to, but yeah, if I don't resonate with their art, I can't really. Because at the end, when I talk about the person's art, it's real. I'm not just making it up. I can't do
right.
that if that's not true for me.
And that's the great place of, yeah, just weighing the art for the art. Because I met one painter whose work is so fantastic. He was doing this Napoleon. He was a Canadian artist. Tony Sherman recently passed away, unfortunately, but huge and caustic paintings. Like he really came on the world scene with painting a Napoleon, and they're just, man, they're so good. Well, and I'm biased because of the portraiture, but I met him. I'm like, oh, I get the Napoleon reference. He's like 5 foot nothing, an ego bigger than the room would allow. It's like, oh, but your work has to be so good to push through that kind of a hole, right? It's like, and like, well, Picasso, notoriously a huge asshole, but his work is, yeah, there's some merit to it. But then I think also, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. I'm like, why do artists have egos? Like the artist is never important. Art is important. Like if Picasso never existed, somebody else would have made the Times cover or the had solo shows in lieu of. And art is important. But when artists thinks so greatly of himself, I'm like, you're easily replaced. There's so much other great art other than yours. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, but it's across the board. You see that in film directors, musicians,
Of
poets.
course. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know about poets. Yeah, wasn't Dylan Thomas like a bit like that? I think he was a bit,
I'm
a bit,
lacking. I'm a little light
a
on
bit
my
difficult.
poet knowledge. Sorry, John. I love
I think
poetry.
I saw
I
a
met.
movie where he was a bit difficult. That's what I'm getting that
Oh,
from.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. Where we get a reference. Hey, I worked with James Joyce's nephew. Funny enough.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. He's Irish poet, I think. But
writer. Yeah, yeah,
writer. Oh, is he more of a writer than a poet?
yeah.
James Joyce.
Ulysses, one of the most famous books
Oh.
in contemporary literature. Yeah,
Oh, that one. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. That
Not
little
related to Star Wars. No, I'm just kidding.
probably is now. I'm sure they got a reference in there somewhere.
But yeah, he spoke of his uncle in not the most flattering light, which is,
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
he's supposed to be an incredibly difficult person
yeah, yeah,
and big
yeah.
ego, from what I've heard. From what I
Oh,
don't, I
really?
haven't read. Yeah, apparently, yeah. Yeah, I don't know why that is. I don't know. But then like people are so complicated, and we're so damaged in many ways. Like if you've got that kind of thing to express yourself, maybe it's just it's more to do with art. Like if maybe your bank manager is a closet egomaniac as well, but he's working in a field that doesn't really
Mm,
cultivate that.
bitter, bitter. Yeah.
I don't know the inner workings of bank managers, but I'm just using that
No.
as an example of a very straight and contained kind of job. They
Hmm.
probably don't even exist anymore, bank managers, do they? They used to be. Or let's say an
Right.
accountant or something like that. It's not like an accountant kicks open the door and goes, the accountant has arrived the way an artist would. Well, I hope not anyway. Um, so maybe it's the vehicle of the work that sort of brings that out in people.
Isn't it? I think I would argue that it's a lack of confidence. It's insecurities or ego, like it overcompensates.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah, but
just
what I'm saying is maybe the bank manager or the accountant has those insecurities as well, but it's not brought out of them in the same way because of the vehicle that they work in. Whereas art, it's
mhm.
like you're more exposed or something, the good and the insecurities.
Yeah, we're more public domain. Yeah, I bet you there's power tripper bank managers that like to put their peers or colleagues or their employees under the thumb, and but
Yeah.
yeah, they don't get the press.
Yeah. Maybe there's a newsletter or something for bank managers, and that's where they it shows up.
You could get inside their world and see what's happening on their inner workings. Yeah, that'd be pretty
Yeah.
boring. That'd cure my insomnia, I think. Reading bank. Anyway, sorry.
What kind of medium do you like to use?
Um, yeah, it's paint. It's two dimensional. Everything from I love encaustic with beeswax. Um, I'm far from mastering it, but I think
That's
I'm
the one you have
sneaking
to
up.
heat up, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Greeks used it to, I think, seal their ships, and then somebody dropped some ash in it, and they could do painting to design their ships as they're sealing it.
yeah.
And then the Egyptians at the Met, there's some amazing portraits outside of the canon of Egyptian art, but it's of that date where there's lifelike images of those who passed. They're deceased. They put it on this on it was on panel, some kind of wood, uh, and they put that with on the deceased sarcophagus, the wrappings,
Mm.
and they look more fresh than the Renaissance paintings of just 500 years ago. It's amazing.
Wow, and that's because of the wax, is it? It preserves the pigment.
Wax, yeah, it's you could eat honey, and from the Egyptian times, they still find bowls, pottery of full of honey and wax. It's just this
Mm.
miraculous material that, yeah, you put a little bit of pine resin with the wax. It's a ratio, and that helps harden the wax. And
Yeah.
I think that's really its only job. But yeah, you could use oil and dry pigments with encaustic, and it's so immediate. Like it cools. It doesn't dry. It cools obviously, and you could scrape back into it, and you could do a reductive
Wow.
application as well as additive. It's yeah,
And
fascinating.
and the other kind of mediums, the linseed, the walnut, all those kind of ones. Do you have a particular special little Aaron
I love
mix?
Old Holland. If I could get single pigment big tubes of Old Holland, I don't know if they're a sponsor of your show, but I'd be happy to
No,
be
surprisingly,
a
they're not.
what? Those
I
sons.
know.
Oh, and they're neighbors. Like they're just over the some water from you. Yeah, oil. I love the smells. I love terps, even though I'm my nose. I think the turpentine is kind of burning out my nose. People walk into the studio and they'll be overcome by the smell, and I'm like, what? That's in my cologne. But yeah, oils like I'm a romantic oil painter, I think, at heart, and I foray in these other things just to see if I can.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, acrylic has a place. I think acrylic always seems a little bit brighter. It always has a little more punch with the chroma that's seductive in its own. But yeah, watercolors on my always kind of in the background too. Uh, I think you have one of she does kids and they're very watery, like they're just beautiful. It's on a substrate like a clay substrate. Mary
Yeah.
something,
Ali Kavanagh.
Alec Kavanagh. Yeah, she just makes me want to paint in watercolor. Like
Yeah.
I'll change mediums when you see something so good, you just want to give it a go. And They really are the best spokespersons for media.
Yeah, yeah, no, they're brilliant. She's been on a few times as well.
Oh,
Now, if you're thinking to yourself, God, I'm really enjoying this podcast, I've listened to a few now and they're brilliant. And there's so many of them. And I've learned so much from listening to them. And you know what? If I met that John Dalton fella in real life, I'd love to buy him a cup of tea and have a chat with him. I'd love to do that every month if I could. Well, now you can. The tea part at least, because this podcast runs on cups of tea bought for me by people like you who listen to the podcast and send me the price of a cup of tea once a month through the Patreon account. That's patreon.com/John Dalton Gently Does It. All one word. And if you're one of those people who already send me cups of tea through Patreon, thanks a million. The tea is lovely and I really appreciate it. Now, the great thing is that if you can't afford to send me the price of a cup of tea or you don't want to, that's fine. You still get exactly the same podcast for free. It's sort of an honor system where the people who can afford it and want to pay for the people who can't or don't want to. So it's all lovely. So if you'd like to send me a cup of tea once a month, you can do that through Patreon. I'd really appreciate it. It makes a huge difference to me. Do you have a favorite kind of brush or shape of brush that you always, prefer, or palette knife, that kind of application tool?
I think one of your guests. I think I was painting when one of your guests was saying it's a Hug's hair fan brush. On the larger paintings, it holds so much paint, but it doesn't get lost in the hairs. Like
Mm-hmm.
it'll hold a lot of paint, but it doesn't all get absorbed. And I'll mix with a palette knife, and then bring the fan brush into play and with actual direct application onto the surface, which is my ideal way. But then I just like the Klinsky whatever brushes. I'll do that with thin small pieces
Yeah.
if I'm not rubbing my face with it and just enjoying the real fur of it. I'm a little tactile that way.
Yeah, the seductive experience.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
how do you check yourself as you're working? Like a lot of artists use mirrors, they'll turn the canvas upside down, take photos on their phone, get critiques from their friends. What sort of things do you do?
Yeah, all that. Um, with my ex, we had this rule that no comments unless asked for because we shared a studio space, and I
Okay.
think that saved the relationship for a few years there. Because nothing worse than we all kind of project what we're going to see it, how we're going to see it when it arrives. But those little speed bumps, those little offhanded comments when it's a whip work in progress, can really derail. And
Yeah.
um, but what's another Picasso thing? A work never is finished; it just stops. And
Yeah.
if it's in my area, I will tinker away. Very few will I not keep touching. Um, the photos, the phone's great. Yeah, the shrinking of it. It's not too true on color, but also converting it to black and white on the phone is a great tool,
Yeah.
just to see if the values are somewhere near in the neighborhood. Um, yeah, I just look and stand and look and look and look. That's I don't really have any other devices.
Yeah. Very good. Do you have a varnishing preference?
I rarely varnish. Um, I don't know why. I think the world is doomed in 100 years, so varnishing won't be that big of a deal. There'll be other issues in 100 years where the artwork, yeah, it's not such a concern. But yeah, I don't really varnish. If I have some darks, like getting those deep, deep blacks, I might just varnish areas, spot areas to really push those blacks. But yeah, I don't really varnish. I like when light. hits the painting on the side, and you see the dull and the matte. 'Cause I'll use walnut, which is a little more glossy as opposed to linseed, and you just in the world of what's it cliche painting. What's the fake print stuff? Like everything's mechanical. It's like wow, there's surface, there's different shines, sheens on it. I like seeing all that witness of direct hand. So yeah, varnishing, it's magical. I do watch way too many videos when people are varnishing their work and it comes to life and it just
Yeah.
enwrittens it. But yeah, I don't want to be too dependent on that, or maybe it's cheap, maybe it's all the way above. I don't really know.
What's the lighting setup in your studio like?
I like it bright. I like it a little bit warm. I'm not so much into ideal lighting because that's not real world function to me. A painting should look hopefully half decent in the worst kind of lightings.
Yeah.
And then when it has the right lighting, if it's in a museum or gallery, it's like, wow, does it really pop? Like that's ideal. But I don't worry too much on lighting. Of course, being in Queens in New York and with panel north facing lighting, I wouldn't be against. But yeah, I usually paint. I like painting in a space with no windows because I find windows very distracting. It reminds me of what I'm missing outside, and I love to be outdoors.
Oh,
So, and
okay.
I don't want to know what's going on. I don't know. Like I tell myself it's raining and it's a crappy day, and that's
Oh,
good
yeah.
enough to spend 8 or 10 hours in the studio. But if I know it's sunny and people are walking about, that's just another distraction that will
Hmm.
usually win.
Yeah. 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 I can totally relate to that.
Although I could probably have a studio in Ireland. I heard you guys get a lot of rain. That'd be
Yes, we do. We get a lot of rain, and the sky is grey a lot of the time. Yeah. So yeah, you'd have a lovely time here. but
and it makes
but
your
you
hair grow longer.
the rain, yeah, did in my case anyway. But the thing is, if you had a studio here, you wouldn't know you were here because you'd never go out because
Right. Yeah, yeah.
you'd for the first month you'd stick your nose outside the door and check and go, yep, still raining. Okay, I'm on the right track here. And after a while, then you could be anywhere. So you could pretend you're in Ireland right now.
Although the cold, we've had a few snaps, so it's minus 30 Celsius centigrade, which I don't know for your Fahrenheit listeners, but that's a good reason to stay indoors for a
Yeah,
few months of the year here. That's
yeah, yeah, for
pretty.
sure.
But Calgary's like we're the sunniest city in Canada, so that's
Okay.
still yeah. We could dress for the cold as long as there's no wind. The yeah. Anyway, it's different environments for sure.
What do you listen to, if anything, when you're working?
Other than John Dalton, easy does it. What else
Gentlemen.
is there, John? Generally
That's
does it.
right.
Easy does it.
Yeah.
Your other
Who is
podcast.
this? Yeah, well, it's this other podcast. Yeah, well, that's lovely. Glad to hear it. Is it all podcasts, or do you listen to music as well, or audiobooks, or?
Actually, it ebbs and flows. I get away from podcasts for months. I love Philosophize This, and most NPR productions are fantastic.
Hmm.
Like one of your last guests is like you're double dipping. We're being productive and learning at the same time. I
Yeah.
like that idea with
The
podcasts.
vocal fry doesn't get you with NPR now.
The vocal fry, what's that?
Vocal fry is the way they all talk on NPR.
Oh shoot, you might have ruined NPR. That's all I'll be hearing now. Dang. No, I've never noticed that. And I'm very what's it? What's the term for sound mesophonia, I think, where pops and like eating noises just drive me nuts. I lose my
Oh,
mind with if I'm not eating with people and I just hear them eating, like yeah, and those
oh,
little pops are there's like a little cluck in the back if the mic's too close and you hear those mouth sounds,
yes,
like those wet sounds.
Yes.
drive me bonkers. Oh, I lose my shit. But yeah, NPR doesn't seem to have too much of that. They have great sound.
Oh no, they've got
Yeah,
great production.
philosophize this. Yeah, yeah. They should have some money. Um, yeah. There's Smartless, Jason Bateman. I'll sometimes go for a little levity with Will Arnett and some comedy. Dana Carvey and David Spade. Uh, but yeah, it gets a little formulaic when you really binge on podcasts. Yeah, the repetition kind of gets me, and then I'll go to music and lose some hearing on that, playing it way too loud. I might try my new earbuds with all that, so I won't
Mm.
bug my new neighbors. Yeah, yeah.
And
Thanks,
any
John.
particular type of music or just whatever?
I'm all over. I was playing music in class the other day, and we had like World War One to French, mid-century French to like Tool. Yeah, I put it on shuffle and 20,000 songs.
Okay.
It's all over.
How do you name your paintings?
Ooh, that's a tough one because I've hated paintings because of the title, like of other people's.
Ah, okay.
I, and
Oh, you have to
I
give me an example of
Untitled.
that.
Oh, anything like sublime soliloquy on a quintessential lance, like sublime anything drives me nuts.
Okay, I'm gonna have to change the name of some of
Overused.
my paintings.
Sorry, I realized that I'm talking to a meditative, spiritual person.
No, I don't have any
Uh,
paintings called Sublime anything.
Whew, oh, good. Yeah, anything that's like just too saccharine, too when people try so hard to be so poetic, and it's just,
Hmm.
I think sincerity is the best thing that we can offer, and honesty as artists. I think because people relate to that and really respond on that deeper level instead of just, oh, that's pretty or whatever. I Yeah, I'll naming is hard, and I never try to default to untitled. Untitled's kind of a cop out. Uh, and then I'll turn to like Latin. I love the idea of Latin. I've never studied it, but I love that it's an old dead language that we still try to resuscitate. And I'll try to have some. Um, I'll look for a word, just Google a word that, and then convert it to Latin, just because it sounds scholarly, maybe. But
Yeah.
um, that's when I'm really stuck. But yeah, naming's not too important unless I write it on the back. But there's a lot of paintings of mine where the title's crossed off. I got a new title for it, and it's a China marker crossed off. Miss, yeah, it's titling is it. Well, it's kind of like how I sent you a photo of my portrait for your social media thing. I'm not a photographer. I'm a painter of paints people. It's like, yeah, this is truer who I am than just a snapshot. I understand the advertising of it, but the painting is what's important. It's not really the title. The title can enhance the piece, of course, but I don't have that power, I think. I just want it to live as the visual.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of it kind of as it's like a personality. It's sort of it
Hmm.
like yeah, it can sometimes they're great, I don't think I've ever come up with a really clever, wonderful title that really added a whole other dimension to the painting. But I've seen other people do that. But what I like it is it's a little bit like with kids, it's like just being able to tell them apart, or when someone's talking about them, they go, that one it's called blah blah, and it's like, oh yeah, I know the one you're talking about. It's that's their it's its name in a way.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. Identifying the individual piece. Well, and like Damien Hirst, the inconceivability of mortality when you're alive or something, the dead shark thing. I'm like that piece needs that title,
Yes.
or else it's just a dead shark in formaldehyde. But
Yeah,
when you add that little short paragraph, that little sentence to it, it's like, wow, that's actually pretty profound.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think names probably matter a lot more with conceptual art. Like they've got a job
Hmm.
to do there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Good point.
um, Charlotte Greenwood in Canada says, "What's the theme of your next
Hmm.
body of work, Aaron? And how do you come up with the themes of your art? What inspires you?" So it's kind of three questions there. So
Well,
what's the theme for the next body? Let's do that one first.
are they allowed to have more than one question? You should put
Yes,
that on the. Oh,
yes, they
wow.
are.
I was just
Yeah,
darn.
some people send in
I'm friends with
multiples.
Charlotte. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm in flux right now on focus. I just I got rid of a bunch of debt, which is fantastic. I do art services. I install art for some galleries and museums and gallery being redundant around town, and that
Yeah,
really pays the bills and allows me to not worry too heavily on sales on art. So it's a nice freedom, but it's a balancing act. I I really want to make art on my broken relationships, but then what am I doing that for? Is it kind of revenge painting, or am I? Do I like what is that for me? Do I show it? Do I? I think I need to do something with that. What that looks like yet, that's still up in the head, unformed. But I have some ideas. Yeah, and it's very personal work, which I'm not afraid to do. But that's what's kind of in the dominant field of the near future. And then, yeah, I have some commissions, but the next series of work is that one's kind of stifling. That one seems so many people out of art school, they're questioning, what do I do now? And they'd just be paralyzed by that question. And so I try not to. I like the perspective of looking back. Just make work. Just make wherever you are. And that series is something in hindsight instead of foresight.
yeah,
It'll tell you what it is after the fact.
yeah. I
Um,
understand your caution though, because like with anything to do with other people, it's not just you. Like when you're, if you when you're considering uh, this subject of relationships, it's different because it's not just you. Other people are involved, so
right.
it's a whole
And
other
if
dimension.
yeah, and if they're still alive, like it's one thing to paint about the past or the ones who have passed, but if they're still alive and yeah, it's because we've said everything we could say to each
Yeah,
other audibly and personally, but now it's other people to witness, and I don't know. I don't know about that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Lots of deep blacks, lots of what's it, venti black,
Oh yeah, is that what it's called? Vanta
simple
Black,
or
Vanta Black, isn't it?
vanta black. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, really, all you can do is talk about or express your experience, and hope it's not, that you're not offending anybody, the other person, or you're not, you know.
Right.
I think if you can just keep it to your experience, you're safe.
It sounds like you might have some. Do you have a history of painting relationships, John?
No, no, but I have
No.
lots of experience of relationships, both my own and other people's, in my other work. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
the
Hmm.
more ownership the more you take ownership of everything, that it's much more empowering.
100%. Yeah. There's some wisdom in those grays.
One or well, thank you. um, okay, so Charlotte also asked how you come up with themes for your art. You might have answered that already, but if you want to say anything else about it.
Yeah, it's again just looking back. It's I might have an idea for one work, um, and then if that doesn't pan out, then yeah, I'm not making 100 stretches for this 100 portrait process. It's and then just getting to the third painting and going, whoops, I'm not into that anymore. So yeah, it's more the series shows itself after the fact
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
where I was than where I will be.
And our last question is, what inspires you? Again, you've covered it, but is there anything else you want to say about it?
I think it's the case of this is the thing I'm least worst at, and it's just what I can do, and I'm not dependent on other people, like, or very rarely. There's a little dependency on people with shows and galleries and things, but it has its great freedom being an artist, and that freedom is fun to swim in. Um, Even though people may hate your work or or like it, it's you, and just that it's self-perpetuating. I guess that inspiration just like I was going to say, Chuck Close said it best. The the amateur waits for inspiration, where the professional shows up. And if I have a studio with the least amount of friction to get to and have the paints ready, it snowballs onto itself. And yeah, you
Yeah.
become your own inspiration. It's a nice place to be. Like you could see things that really move you. And Instagram, I've become numb to all the good art, and then there's so much good art, but it's too much now. It's an addiction being on the electronics and looking at this, because it doesn't do what it books and magazines and movies used to do. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna go do this. It's just you forget as soon as you scroll almost, and it's benign, which is the worst thing an art piece can be. Like, I'd rather have somebody hate my work or love it than be benign or indifferent to. That's a death of a, I think, a visual artist.
Right.
Anyway.
Chrissy Nickerson, again in Canada, says, yes, can't wait. The heist question. What would you take across time in any culture, in any medium? Greatest art heist for you? Do you understand that
Ooh.
question?
I asked her what she meant on that, and she followed up. I'm like, wow, that's okay to not understand that question either. But the greatest art heist, I think I would steal. There's a chalk drawing of Madonna, Saint Anne, and John the Baptist in the National Gallery of Leonardo da Vinci, and I would love to have a little Jackson Pollock esque studio or dwelling, and it's just me and that painting and really good lighting on that painting. That'd be in a quiet little place in BC on the coast. That's what I would steal and covet to the end of my days.
That's very specific and sounds lovely.
Just came to me right now, actually.
Very good. Marcia Jean Harris, again in Canada, says, tell us about the series on war vets, what inspired that, and also scale. Do you have any plans to go larger? So again, you talked a little bit about your war vet series. So if there's anything else, and yeah, you talked about murals as well, but yeah, talk some more on that.
Yeah, the families loved it, which was nice. I was nervous for that show. Um, Accolades were very encouraging, but yeah, more war vets are on the way. Again, just to keep them in memory and their sacrifices, and the stories. There's this one war vet. He was the first painting I did, and he was the back of a Lancaster, and he was communicative, but he wore the shielding jacket, and I guess it wasn't a chair. You were suspended at whatever height, 20,000, 30,000 feet, and it was minus 30 or 40, minus 40 degrees in this little glass tin, and you see oncoming, fighters trying to light you up. And that memory of his story came back to me. And there's a new painting that I'll be working on shortly here, and I mean, I can't wait for those memories to come back to me of his stories. His family was just super lovely and super giving. But yeah, just I love age and faces, like wrinkles and a life lived, and and everybody, most people look at that and is like, wow, there's a life lived. They don't know the details, but it's interesting how that comes across, that unknown narrative, that um, without detailed narrative that's so engaging. Where babies are the worst. Like they're just, you can have fun with paint, but they're just brown things, balloons of flesh. It's like there's no life lived. They're of course they're cute and adorable, but they're boring as hell.
Yeah, it's funny. I think most people get that, that, yeah, it's like you can see all the lines in the face and whatever. Once it's about other people, once it's themselves, it's like, oh no, I think I
Oh
need to go and get some,
yeah,
Botox
Botox,
or get a
filler.
facelift or whatever people do. But yeah, it's so true.
That's it.
Like,
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, it's so true that older faces have got, their life is written on the face. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. It is. And it's funny you bring that up because a lot of the guys and girls that I worked with, they had dementia, and I would draw them as they were, very honest representation of them that then, and they would always, more often than not, go, "Who's that old guy?" Because you regress till you're 20, right, with dementia, and you think of yourself as the young whippersnapper of yesteryear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's you.
Yeah. And what about your plans to go larger?
6 foot square is kind of my sweet spot. I'm really happy with 6 foot square. I might do some landscapes, some encaustic landscapes that are a little bit larger with my painting pal Mark Holiday. But the studio life is so solitary, as you know. You have your podcast, but we're a lot of painters. We're just in our heads in our studio, and we have a we have similar sensibilities when it comes to surface and paint and medium, and lots of shits and giggles and Guinness that we just put together. So we've had 5 by 15 feet uh, paintings together and 10 foot square paintings together, and he would always say that he's fixing my mistakes, and I retort with, "Well, I'm getting it right, putting things down correctly." But yeah, this will be our third collaboration coming up. We've yeah half a dozen or a couple of dozen paintings together, which is yeah a great friend to have.
Mm. Oh, that sounds great. Carol Freeman in New York says, "Love your work, Aaron. How did you get the Last of Us gig? Or yeah, how did the Last of Us gig happen?" So maybe
Oh,
explain what she's talking about.
hi, Carol. Yeah, I did the art for the HBO series a couple of years ago for The Last of Us. Is post-apocalyptic zombie fungus thing. This is going to be a long podcast. So I got out of the studio, getting out of debt. I went to work as a set deck person to gain my membership in the union here. And they found out I was a painter. Actually, going back to set deck, I had a really bad back, and all that heavy lifting, moving fridges and everything, cured me of my bad. I was crying for the first 3 days, and then all of a sudden, oh, it's just core strength, and I gained all this core strength, and so I'm eternally happy for to HBO for curing my bad back of a year. But they found out I was a painter, and then I worked as a scenic painter, and then they found out I was a fine art painter, and then they put me in the special department for doing the fungus uh, look of the feature, and then I got fired. I went to an art residency, which they knew that I was coming into BC, interior BC, British Columbia, a little cabin out in the woods. And I came back, and I think my boss thought I was out in Vancouver partying in the height of COVID. So COVID protocol on the set was very extreme or proper, but They were very sensitive to it. And then I came back and I went to work without checking in and getting tested, even though there's other things around that. I got fired, and it's the first time I've ever been fired. And I was like so pissed off. I've never been fired. I was hurt, and yeah. Anyway, it sucks. So, but before then, I put in my submission because they were looking for a local artist to do one of the episodes where an artist does the art for the studios. I put it in, never heard anything. 2 months after I got fired, it's like, yeah, we accept your work, and they're really excited. The showrunner, who's the big deal, he's bigger than a director or
Mm.
just outside of HBO itself. He's the man in charge. He's the game developer. He liked my work, and I was doing all these things. And there was an artist before me who got fired, and I guess he blew his top uh, because of it, because he hated the work so much that everybody around him was so sensitive and scared to approach him with any kind of art. So they were second guessing the artist, and I had a bunch of redos. I was painting Nick Offerman, one of the characters in the film. I forget his, or the actors in the film. I forget what his character's name was. They came back 10 times, and I was told to charge for every time I was repainting it, which was great. It was great money. It's a great gig. But again, I was still pretty upset by being fired. So I was like spite creating, if that makes sense. And I, yeah, came back, and they liked it, and off I went. I did a month's worth of work for them, and I was doing charcoal drawings, and still not caring too much about the quality of work I was doing. And then they got my paycheck, and the show comes out a few months ago, and the first viewing of it was for that episode was 6.5 million people. I'm like, head smack. Oh my god, why didn't I give a shit and do like a good job and put my better work out there? And yeah, it was hindsight, and I mean, it hurt ego and all that. And
So
but
it's
it
actually
really,
it's actually on camera. Is it your work is actually on camera?
yeah, it's in the pretty much two-thirds of the show. The character, well, when I read the screenplay, I got a little teary-eyed. I'm like, this is so beautiful. Like, this story is, it's not about forbidden love. It's just about love and kindness, and all chaos outside of this solid relationship. Even though that relationship has its issues, they still found a way, and it's this beautiful tragic um ending. Not what's Romeo and Juliet referred to? Not tragic, but um it evades me. Anyway, yeah, it was such a great thing to be a part of in this story. I wish of course, there was a little more screen time, and they didn't show the ones that I was actually most proud of, but out of my control.
Ah, okay. Well, that's great. Wow.
Oh, so
Six
but
point.
actually, oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go on.
It was more of like friends. If this goes back to a bigger thing, I was just saying yes to everything. I had an attitude change where I was just like, yes, why not? I'll show at that cafe. Yes, I'll show with you. Oh, you won't like? I'm happy to be wherever. I'm not bigger or better than anything. Just saying yes to any kind of art opportunity has helped me so much in this city with being self sustained and self um, financially. It's great. And so a friend of mine from grade school married this movie guy who we hit it off, and this movie guy helped some friends around me, and then yeah, it's this being open and being kind. I love how you sign your emails, kindness, and like it's just kind of that in this. Just be kind, and things open up to you. Like the energy you give off, the energy you get. And that's how that, I think, show came about.
Well, that's
Landed on my
lovely.
lap, but yeah, Very nice.
Um, how do you deal with self doubt?
Hmm. Well, there's a sweet spot, right? Where self-doubt is okay. It's like you kind of it's a Siamese twin where you share vital organs with. It's like it'll push you to be better. When you're complacent or um, when you're satisfied with your work, it's dead. I find the artists that I know personally who they work on a piece is like, that's a great piece. I'm like, wow, I wish I had that confidence. But then I ask, do I? Because their work hasn't grown. There's no chance or risk in the last 20 years. It's
Hmm.
so a little bit of self-doubt is a nice partnership. It's yeah, we share some vital organs with, and we just have to learn coincide with doubt and a little bit of deprecation and just yeah, it's interesting because I sometimes I hear people think that I have an ego. It's like no, it's not confidence. It's not ego. It's just not giving a shit. Like you just have to do it, even if all those that doubt and self-loathing and all those negatives. It's just like who gives a shit? Just nobody. Does anybody around you remember the pants you wore yesterday? No, but it took you 2 hours to choose those pants yesterday. It's like that's the bigger picture. Like everything just moves on regardless, and just accepting that and just doing what you want, as long as it's not at the mercy or pain or hurt of others. Who cares? Just do it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Um, how do you or did you balance being a parent and being an artist? Just practically, childcare, logistics, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I was very fortunate. My wife, ex-wife, had a great paying job and very supportive. Even after we signed the divorce papers, she was like, Aaron, you're many things that I don't like, but you're a great artist. I'm like, whoa, coming from her, that was a really great compliment because that means a lot. Those other things don't mean as much, but uh, I knew there was something there that maybe got rid of a little bit of my self doubt. It's hard. You're gonna be dropping balls. I drop balls all the time, and I don't know if I'm that great of a parent because my focus or lack of focus in everything but art comes through. Thankfully, my ex is a great mother and really picked up the slack on parenting that I might give or I do give. But yeah, my boys are my world, and I would give up art if they asked me to, but they actually believe in me too. So yeah, it's the things that I missed when my oldest went to the nationals, and I missed a volleyball game of his where he got MVP, and I could only vicariously hear and see videos of that. But yeah, the financial thing is tough too. I haven't had a hot water heater in my new place for a month and a half. I'm like, Aaron, the people at camp, this is third world. You can do this. Like it's yeah, it's things are always going to be tough for most of us. I think it's just your mindset going into it. It's like, wow, I have water. you know, I
Yeah,
don't need a coffee in the morning. I have a cold shower, and who needs the coffee? But I still have the coffee.
yeah, it's lovely. What's the last piece of art you bought?
Ooh, I like art almost as much as I doing it. Almost like yeah, it's I have this Michael Cameron gave me a piece a few weeks ago, and I'm totally spent with Canadian painter out of Banff, or yeah, out of Banff, uh, Alberta. I try to. Thankfully, galleries do layaway, and sometimes it's a very modest uh, some, but they do it, and yeah, the last piece of art, I've even bought a piece of photography. That was surprising to me because photography, you're really just finding four sides. Let's be honest. But this Ben Cope out of LA, I bought a piece from Christine Clausen when I years ago that I love. Yeah, there's I really have my eyes on artsy on Alex Kanevsky, but I need a hot water tank before then.
Do you though? Do you really?
You know, I like where your head's at. I like where your head's at, John. That's it's dangerous, but I like it.
Right, this is my desert island question. So you're on a
Oh,
desert island, all your food and shelter are taken care of, so you don't have to spend any time or energy on food or shelter. There's any kind of art supplies that you want are there,
hmm.
but no one's coming and no one's ever going to come. So do you still paint even though no one's ever going to see it? The only person who's ever going to see it is you.
I like this question, and I was thinking about when one of your last podcasts. It seems, yeah, not silly, but it's like, yeah, would I do art regardless? And I think I would because I could only be on a beach for so long. Then I started grabbing the driftwood and I start like making. I'm not too much of a sand digger, but I start trying to balance things and make art on the beach. I can't lounge, so that's the closest to a desert island I think I've ever came to. But I would paint for sure. I would paint, and instead of photos, I'd probably, of course, coconut still lifes. Because first and foremost, I think you can have a lifetime, even though I've not lived a lifetime. If you do art for yourself first and foremost, you'll always do it,
Yeah,
and that's the answer. I think is I would do it regardless, and having others look at it is just a bonus. It's secondary to the primary of why I
yeah.
do art.
And do you think the paintings that you made would they be very different or very similar? And I don't mean so much in in a very literal sense of, oh well, I could only paint coconuts. Like, just let's say you had as much reference as you wanted.
Oh, hey, yeah. Now that's a little deeper dive. I have no idea. I would if I had all the art materials, that'd be super fun. What was one silent? Yeah, I don't know how to answer that because I'd probably paint from life, but then I do like exploring an abstract. Like it'd be the same structure of my same MO now. Although I like I'm getting more and more into how like classical and sight drawing. It's really becoming more interesting to me. So maybe that's where I'd go on the island. But yeah, zinc white would be a good sunscreen if because you said there was maybe no sunscreen. I'd have all the paints there.
I
Zinc white would be
well, I
I could use
didn't
that. Yeah.
actually talk about sunscreen, but okay.
I want to have a long career on this island by myself. So yeah, proper skincare would help prolong that.
It always
That's
amazes me the things
ridiculous.
that people come up with when they answer this question.
What would you do? What would you do on this island?
Would I make art?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I have a feeling though, it'd be a mixture of different things. I would like I'm pretty aesthetic in everything I do. Like the way things look um matters to me. So I would
Hmm.
probably carve things, I'd probably make little sculptures, I'd probably make paintings, I'd probably, make
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
trails, little houses, any kind of
Yeah.
stupid stuff that just made me happy. I'd probably do that.
Right. Divert a little stream close to the shelter kind of thing and a little
Yeah,
canal.
make little water
pools.
sculptures. Yeah, I like those water sculptures. Where one bucket fills and it tips up another thing, and
Oh
that
yeah,
those
yeah,
kinetic kind
yeah.
of sculptures. I like all that sort of stuff as well. So yeah,
I think we're
I could
kindred there. Yeah, yeah.
I could do
Because
lots of
yeah, it's just
things.
lounging around like a 5-star hotel or whatever. It just sounds like a living death to me. Like where people just drink their mojitos by the pool. Like I have to be moving in some. I'm not a fast mover, but I'm constantly moving. Just yeah.
Yeah. If there was one underlying theme to all your work, what do you think it would be?
Oof. I like seeing the humanity in work. I was like earlier mentioned looking at Rembrandt. Like that's maybe the reason why I paint because that time, those centuries have passed, but I still feel connected. Like I know that person
Yeah.
and is so moved by it. But I don't think we could get that out of our own work. I think that's impossible, even though it might be the fuel of why we paint. I think we'll never look at our work like we do others. We might be
No.
satisfied, and there might be pride of ownership that we did that, but we'll never cry in front of our own work. you know, for
Not
some
not for
reason, I
those
think that's a
reasons.
yeah, exactly. How much is that tube of paint? Oh, it's a disaster. Yeah, totally. That's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
it's seeing the human condition, that gravitas, or not that it's. So I'm always going for. Yeah, it's weird. I never really think of joy. Hopefully, a good painting brings joy, even if it's a little solemn, the image. But
mm,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Yeah. How have you got on with the business side of the art world? Some people have love stories, some people have horror stories. How's it been for you?
it's been okay. I've been, yeah, as aforementioned, I have to supplement it with doing art services, but it's still art based. Like seeing where people's paintings end up is kind of fascinating. And yeah, even though art is many things, we all kind of poo poo the art that's not like ours. Like people get upset, oh, that's decorative art. I'm like, that's just one finger of the hand of art. Like art can be all things. It can be conceptual. It can be, and when you open yourself up to all the things that art can be and does, I think it's just easier on your soul. Like like a Rothko doesn't make sense. But when you stand in front, even opening a book with Rothko, I have an emotive experience before I even read the rhetoric behind it. It's like, why? It's wow. This art is just pure color. This is what the power of paint in the most simple form can do. The bringing the business to it, it's yeah, I'm worth something. There's 20 years of experience and tutelage of my dad and mentors and art schools and hustling. I like hustling because I think the best mindset for art is seeing it as a game and you're playing. And then if it's real life, it's like, oh, you get kicked in the gut. But if you see it as a game and you have good sportsmanship with it, it's a lot easier to navigate and coincide with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow, that's a very good way of thinking about it. Very very healthy.
Trying to keep my mental health okay.
Good. So what sort of prices are your paintings selling for these days?
Oh, um, a 2 by 3 foot. I don't know that. In Canada, we bounce back and forth between imperial and metric, but 2 by 3 foot painting have between 32 and 4,000 if it's commission. My 8 foots are about 9,000 Canadian. So it's a heck of a deal to
Mm.
anybody in the UK or the US. So you get an instant discount of like 90%. Um,
So those big, the 6x6s, what sort of price do they go for?
not about 9,000, give or take,
Yeah,
I think.
that's a bargain,
Oh,
definitely.
thanks.
Yeah,
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 I don't want to be my own private collector, so I try to keep with my dealer reasonable prices. Yeah, Canada's weird with their pricing. Like the Canadians are, they'll be like the buyers will be like, I pay 9,000. They'll feel bad for it. We're in the States, they pop their chest out and I paid 18,000. Like it's almost this reverse psychology of value or what they spend on. We're pretty modest here and not cheap, but yeah, a little more frugal when it
yeah,
comes to art.
yeah. Do you have a big art dream you'd like to achieve before you die?
One more kiss up. Being on the John Dalton podcast. Hello, jeez.
Yeah,
Okay, and
well, so you
that
tick
that
that
one's a
off.
big obvious one. Yeah, done. Big art dream. Other than making a painting that I'm not embarrassed of or too embarrassed of. Uh, well, it just I just it's more of a growth thing. Like I think I've busted the banks here in Calgary where it's my hometown and I love it and I love supporting the arts, but I just want to see where I can go outside of the city here, provincially or nationally. And there's David Hummer down in Wisconsin
Mm-hmm.
that
Yes.
I was planning on taking some work down, but then this kind of unexpected relationship failure happened and it just threw a monkey wrench in all the cogs. But I really want to get down there and meet him face to face. I think he seems like a wonderful man. Um,
Yeah, he's great. Where you
oh
gonna
yeah,
we gonna have it? We gonna Yeah, yeah. I've had him on the podcast a few times, and I juried the Angies there 1 year.
oh
So I was over there and met him and saw the whole place. It's lovely what he's doing, and he's just expanding the whole thing all the time now. But were you gonna have a show there, or were you just part of a one of the many shows he has there?
well, I had a piece in one of his shows, a juried show, and for more of maybe a private time on how that first Zoom opening went. That was a bit of a story, but he's opening up his own commercial gallery, or I guess it is opened, and he's
Yeah, it is
yeah
now. Yeah.
figurative based, and yeah, he
Oh,
expressed
it was for
interest
that
in
then. So yeah, it wasn't the museum side of it. It was more for his own one. Yeah. What's it called
yeah yeah
again? He told me the last time he was on.
right
I want to say
uh, um,
D'Angelo, but it's not. It's something like that, though, isn't it?
yeah it is. Shoot, this is could be
Something along
edited
those
out where
lines.
we just go to the name.
No, no. People can look it up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's inspiration. Like he's building art where there's kind of a void, it seems, and he's bringing art to the masses. I love that when
Hmm.
it's so easy to complain about what's not happening, but and so much more greater of a thing to just make it happen. Like,
Yeah. Well, he's definitely making it happen. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I love that.
But
It's
it's
inspiring.
got great support from the local community. Like they all love him there, and they really love what he's doing.
Oh,
But
good.
what? Yeah, it's great. Um. Okay, this is my last question. If there's one thing you could pass on to future generations, what would it be?
Oof. Stop having kids. Save the planet.
Stop having kids
uh,
and save the planet. Is that what you
yeah.
said?
Yeah, what future? Actually, a round table with a bunch of actors, a bunch of creatives, and Tom Hanks was talking to the kid from Transformers, the first Transformers. He's a bit controversial. I forget his name, but he's
Shia
like,
LaBeouf.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He's like, Tom Hanks is like, this too shall pass. Bad as everything gets, this too shall pass. You know, just have kindness in your heart and have good intentions to you and those around you, and just try to, even if you stray off, just this too shall pass. Just keep going. Just keep trying. That's I think a lovely way to see overall.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, it's so true. Well, look, I think your paintings are fantastic. I really do. Yeah, I meant to ask you, how come you've got so few followers on Instagram? What's going on there? You should
You know how
have
people,
way more. It's an
you know
injustice.
how people pay for those fake followers?
Yeah?
Well, I pay people not to follow me, so it keeps me humble and having a
Oh, I
big head.
see. I
Yeah, yeah, I
see.
pay a lot of. I don't know how. I just give it to a company and they look after it. To
They keep deleting your followers for you.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
wow. Well, that is so humble of you.
Such bullshit, but yeah, you're. I've been on it for 10 plus years, and you delve deep into my past. I never scroll backwards. I'm like, oh my God, that's still on there. And it's weird watching the likes. I'll be honest. I'm like, oh, people like this one. Oh, that one's a better piece. But
No,
that
I got
it's
those from your website, not from your Instagram feed.
no, no, no. I was looking at your board, your Instagram where you reposted. I'm like, wow, people love this turd. That's or like this turd over this other one. I'm like, that's fascinating to me. It's interesting data.
Yeah, well, I came across your work when you submitted to the John Dalton Art Prize last year, and yeah, I thought it was so good, and yeah, I was
Wow.
really surprised that your following was so small on Instagram because you know, like if I when I saw your work and I went to your Instagram, I wouldn't have been surprised if it was like 200,000, 300,000. You know, it's that good. It's right up there. You know.
Whoa.
Um,
Thanks.
yeah, no, it's really good. It's got everything I like about where contemporary figurative work is going because it's very individual, very distinctive. It's got your personality or your soul or your energy or it's very yours, and yet it's inspiring. It's like, yeah, I never would have thought this, or I never would have thought to do something that way, and yet it's fantastic. Even your choice of subjects, the way you convey them, because painting older people who are you know not doing so great, that's not an easy thing to make to take that and to take me as the viewer and show me the beauty. It's
Hmm.
one thing to see it and to kind of go, yes, I see it. But it's another thing to be able to make as you say, two-dimensional painting of it. And for me as the viewer to go, yes, that is so beautiful. I never would have thought of as an older person in that way, because they work, for me anyway, your paintings work on two levels. They work on a just aesthetically. Like I have a very kind of, my eye is very, it likes things. It likes shapes and patterns, and I've observed the way my eye travels around a painting or a door frame or a piece of wallpaper. It's the same process. It likes
Mm-hmm.
what it likes,
Mm-hmm.
and and it definitely knows what it doesn't like. And if it's like something is going great and then it hits a spot and it's like that, it's like wrong, that should not be there, so like
Right.
my eye can just travel around your paintings, and I have a great appreciation, and there's something very soothing about just the way they all go together, just irrespective of what they're about. So there's that, but then there's also the other part of me that's looking at the or receiving the essence of the energy that was put into the painting, and the person who the painting is of. These two things going together. So yeah, it's a it's a real kind of when people talk about having food that's so delicious it's like a mouthgasm. It's like that. It's like that visually. It's like all these kind of
Huh.
beautiful, pleasurable um, explosions are going off. And, there's the other layer of, yeah, that's where we're all headed. Death is coming. It's closer for this person. And yet there's something undefinable that's encased within this body that is not going to die probably, or I don't know, something eternal, or there's some other element that is conveyed, all of which, God, if I said, well, okay, I'm going to make this painting and it's going to match all these criteria I've just mentioned, I don't know how I do it. And you manage to do it, and you do it repeatedly, and even though you were saying you don't like bodies of work and you get bored and all that kind of thing, there is a lovely continuity to your work. There's a very strong kind of beating heart that runs through all your work, as I receive it anyway. And it's been lovely to talk to you and to get to know you. And
well, I just fell in love with you, John. That was really nice. Wow. That's exactly what I'm going for. I'm like, brush marks are just as important as image, and to have that married, to integrate it, it's all these instruments, it's a symphony. Like, there's the cello, the viola, those are the brush marks, but together they make this image of this person, and I really wanted to sing, and you just put it so eloquently and beautiful. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Eyegasm.
Yeah.
Eyegasm. I love that.
Yeah, well, I didn't say eyegasm because it's not just in my eyes. It's a kind of a whole body thing. But then it's like, what, you mean an orgasm? It's like, no, I don't mean that. But it's like a eyegasm through my eyes, I suppose, or starts with my eyes. Because I see paintings with my eyes, but I feel them in my whole body. I don't it's not just a visual thing for me. It's, it's like what you're saying about crying in front of a Rembrandt, that's a whole body response to something,
Right.
So it's, even though it starts visually, but it's like it's like that thing of when people say, oh, your eyes are the windows to the soul. It's like that, but the other way around. It's like it comes in through my eyes, but it affects my whole body, So it's been lovely to hear your humility, your very honest fragility, that's so relatable, and you definitely haven't got the ego out of control thing that we were talking about. And yet, like, you've got this great passion and great for art, technique, other artists, all that. That's all been beautiful. So it's been lovely to get to know you a bit.
Oh, thanks, John. Yeah, it's great to be here, and thanks for doing the good fight. It's bringing art to so many years, and it's so fascinating, and the commonality, the patterns of people in an interesting way. It's like, I'm fighting with that too. Those are some of the best interviews I've heard through you. Because of you, it's quite the honor to be a part of that bigger conversation. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. And you definitely fit very well in with all the other fantastic artists I've talked to. You definitely are in the game. Huge. Yeah. All right. Well, I keep in touch with everybody for Zoom, tea or coffee or whatever. So I'm sure we'll keep in touch, but we'll say goodbye for now.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
I've never felt this good in my entire life. Make me some spaghetti.
Actually, I'd prefer a cup of tea. A cup of tea would be lovely. So, just a little reminder, mainly because every second or third person who becomes a patron has got in touch with me and said, you know what, I've been listening to your podcast for ages, and I didn't become a patron, not because I don't have the money, not because I don't think it's great, I just didn't get around to it. So this is a little friendly reminder that if you'd like to be a patron, you'd like to buy me a cup of tea, go to patreon.com/John Dalton, gently does it, all one word, or follow the link in the show notes to become a patron. I would really appreciate it if you could do that, particularly if you've been meaning to and you just haven't got around to it. It would be great. It would mean a lot to me. All right. Thank you. Bye.
We are the Argyle Pimps. So buy us a drink. We're better than you thought, but not as good as we think. We are the Argyle Pimps. So buy us a drink. Come on, buy us a drink. Come on, buy us a drink. We are the Argyle Pimps. So buy us a drink. We're better than you thought, but not as good as we think. We are the Argyle Pimps. So buy us a drink. Come on.